Today is Gervaise Heddle, the chairman of Buxton Resources, and Martin Moloney, the recently promoted MD of Buxton Resources. Thank you both very much for joining us today. Gervaise, how are things, first of all?
Really well, thanks for having us. And look, it's an exciting time at Buxton, and obviously the appointment of Marty to the role of MD marks an important change to the business in terms of our focus again on this sort of early stage exploration, which I spoke about when I joined the company in March, but really pushing forward with this now. And Marty, brings a lot of skills to the table in terms of driving, new targets, which is really important, constantly refreshing that pipeline, that portfolio of exploration opportunities that we have. Mm-hmm. He's already brought in a number just in the past few months, which he can maybe talk to later.
Okay.
But also, his ability to deliver on exploration campaigns. And, I'd cite recently, obviously, we had the drilling at Centurion, which initially we were a bit disappointed because we didn't reach basement. But then Marty and the team have gone off and done these assays, and we've come back with some really amazing Pathfinder results. 4 grams per tonne silver in what's effectively sands down there, 800 metres down. So some really interesting outcomes. So I think Marty is definitely the right person to be driving the company from here, and very pleased to have him on the board with us.
Excellent. Good. Well, Marty, let me come to you. First of all, congratulations. I know you've been involved in Buxton for a while. So I think just to start off, maybe if we can just get a bit of a very brief, if we can, sort of history of what you've done in your past and what you've been doing at Buxton and what you intend to do now with the company. Now you've got really the top job.
Yeah, so look, it's a privilege, first of all, I should say, to be the managing director of Buxton. And so, I joined Buxton 6 years ago, and that's after probably about 20 years really focused on exploration. I've worked for large major mining companies, mid-tiers, juniors, for private group across a range of different commodities. And I spent about a year in a mine, and I pretty quickly realized that I'd like to go and do some exploration, and basically I've been doing that ever since. Okay. Very early in my career, I was working alongside some very, very smart people at Mount Isa Mines Exploration in their project generation team, and that's really where I fell in love with this idea of early stage exploration, and where I learned what it means to focus on exploring for giant deposits. And so, really, I find the opportunity at Buxton really compelling because it really it brings all of my experience to a head, and it's a platform from many different points of view that provides an excellent place to go and utilize all of those skills and hopefully make a few more discoveries.
Okay, excellent. Well, I like what you said about exploring for giant deposits. So I know we've spoken to Gervaise before on why he joined Buxton Resources, and we've got a very clear answer on that from past interviews. What was your reason? Is it similar? You're looking for the next multi-million ounce gold project, the next billion-dollar mining company? What is it you want to achieve?
Yeah, so our objective really, and where we fit in to the value generation in the mining industry, is really the bang-on discovery, where a company like Buxton, capitalized at handfuls of millions of dollars, really can turn into a company that's capitalized at handfuls of billions of dollars. Gervaise he's been at the helm of a company where they've executed on that. And so, it's fantastic to work alongside Gervaise from that point of view. But really, that's where we play, and it really guides and informs how we go about targeting for the types of projects that we want to bring in. Really, okay. We're not looking to bolt on a few tens of thousands of ounces out in the gold fields. We're looking to find millions of ounces that are equivalent. Mm-hmm. And so, that really hones down where we want to play in the world geographically. A lot of the big company experience that I've got's taught me about, managing risk and, country risk, particularly from different types of risk. And so, very quickly we've decided to only operate in jurisdictions where there is a clear pathway forward from or into exploration, through exploration into development, and then to actually turn one of those projects into a producing mine.
Cool. So the $1 million question then is, which of the projects in the portfolio could deliver that? That's obviously, you're not going to be able to answer that, but maybe you can give us some insights as to the current projects. Of course, Centurion, where you mentioned the drilling didn't get down to where you wanted it to, but those Pathfinder minerals definitely suggesting that there is something there worthy of further investigation. Madman, I know, is also on the list to drill, but these new projects as well that you've brought in, so there must be a checklist or a criteria that you're checking here, only bringing in what you might say, I guess, compelling projects with that potential. So just talk us through, if you can, the projects and which ones perhaps could be the company maker.
Well, firstly, at a high level, exploration's a numbers game. So, if you kiss a lot of frogs, you'll eventually find your prince. So we have a portfolio approach to managing our projects. We don't have all of our eggs in the one basket. So any one of our projects, we think, could deliver on our objective, which is, a tier 1 discovery in copper, gold particularly, but, associated elements as well. So in Australia, we've got a raft of projects, but particularly, as you mentioned, Centurion looks really interesting. And, the thing that is really appealing about that is its physical scale. There's some really extensive geophysical anomalies there, really intense magnetic feature with an associated gravity feature that extends over 3 by 5 kilometers. So, that you can fit a lot of quality projects into that footprint. So, yes, we drilled a hole at Centurion earlier this year. The hole didn't make it to basement because it intersected a very unusual loose sand down the hole. So we packed up and we've come home, but we've done our homework on that material, and we can see what we're calling a dispersion anomaly. And it's loaded with a suite of pathfinders, but particularly silver, as Gervaise mentioned earlier. We're getting 4.5 grams of silver that appears to be loosely bound to the sand particles in that loose sand at the bottom of the hole. Those levels of silver in a Pathfinder sense, it's got to come from somewhere. It's most likely to have come from somewhere close. We've got a really stonking big magnetic feature really close. There's a bit more work that we want to do on that drill core, particularly further up the hole. We've only really analyzed the base. But we're also doing a little bit of field work right as we speak. We've got a crew showing up at Centurion to use what's called a passive seismic technique to map the basement unconformity, because we think that the depth to basement could vary. So with those two things in hand, we'll look to go back to Centurion, which we still rate as one of the highest ranking projects, we think, in our portfolio. Like you said, elsewhere in Western Australia, probably next on the list is Madman, a heavy aeron lookalike. It's quite, we hope, binary. We go out there, we stick a few holes into that feature, and we see what we get. That one is much shallower, even than heavy aeron. So heavy aeron's 450. We think the depth to this is possibly less than half of that. But it's a similar footprint, so it's a similar size target there, and we saw what heavy aeron did for Greatland. Elsewhere in Australia, and sort of speaking to that project generation aspect, we're constantly bringing projects in, we're fearless in terms of letting projects that we don't think are going to work go as well. So one of the new ones that's come in is Montello, and this just goes to show that even in a place like Western Australia, which a lot of people call as quite mature from an exploration point of view, you can still go out and peg what is essentially outcropping copper, in this case copper silver mineralization, that has upside immediately on a long strike under shallow cover. So historical work by WMC in the 70s got 3 meters at about 9% copper with high levels of silver. I think 20 grams of silver associated with that. From quite shallow, I think that was only about 73 odd meters downhole. And So that was the 70s. And then there was a company that came through in the late noughties, 2009, I think. And they drilled at right angles to WMC and picked up big, thick intervals of lower grade copper mineralization. But they didn't go and really chase it along strike. They had that one crack at a drilling program and they packed up and left. So, and what we've seen at Centurion will speak to this, is that you've got to be persistent. You can't, take a bit of bad news as a reason to leave. You've got to, you've got to keep cracking at it. And so Montello is the name of this copper silver project that we've just picked up. What we'll do there is start engaging with the native title holders, the Aboriginal people there who live at the Warburton settlement nearby to the project. We'll start working with them to see where we can practically explore that project. And if our target area along strike from that copper mineralization undercover is a viable place where we can go and explore, then, hey, we've got a pretty good looking project on our hands there too. So that's a handful of our Western Australian projects that Buxton has. Okay.
Excellent. Well, that's a good little summary there of everything. So, of course, you're going to get back at Centurion after that passive seismic Madman, binary, as you say, but getting to drill that, and, of course, the new one, Montello. Just finally, Marty, looking at what you're wearing compared to Gervaise, I'm guessing you're more of a field man than a desk man. So I'm guessing you're happiest in the field. I could be wrong, but when do you want to get back in the field? If we think about, there's only 2.5 months left of the year. It's not long at all in mining speak, but if you were to sort of give shareholders, potential investors, perhaps a sense of what they can expect before Christmas, is there anything we can look forward to?
So from our Western Australian projects, there'll be that assay work coming out of our Centurion project, and literally just come from looking at that core and extending our sampling program uphole. We will have the results of the passive seismic survey. So once we've got those in hand, we'll really be able to put together the forward program for the drilling. Now it's summer here in Australia, so it's not the ideal time to be executing drilling programs in some of these remote areas. But I guess that's a bit of a segue to our North American projects, where we've got our foot on the throat of a giant porphyry copper moly system, our Copper Wolf project. That's partly a joint venture, about 10, 11 square kilometres in the centre, and there's a surrounding 30-odd square kilometres where Buxton has 100% tenure. Now, presently, we would like to be drilling that right now through the what will be the winter period in Arizona, really the ideal time. So we are working with our joint venture partner, IGO, there quite closely to try and make that happen. And now there's nothing I can say right now about that, but really that's an exciting project in the Buxton portfolio. And there will be a time where we're drilling back in Arizona.
Okay. Yeah, so we're looking for ways to reaccelerate that. Ideally, we'd be on the ground there in the next few months, but there's no guarantees of that. So we're just working with IGO some discussions there.
Okay, good. Well, thank you both.
But as you can see, there's a lot going on, and in Australia next year, there's just so many targets, and the team just keep generating more, and so it's a lot of opportunities remain in WA for our 100% owned properties.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like you're setting up for a good 26, or a very busy 26 anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. And there's a raft of other projects where we're doing that intermediate work between the pegging and coming up with basically the drill definition stage work. One of those is later on. We'll be releasing results of the gravity survey there in the next 4 weeks, I'd say. And there's others where there's similar work going on. So we are really setting 2026 up to have a number of drilling programs going. We hope essentially one after the other, having rigs turning on these projects.
Excellent. good. And a good macro environment at the moment as well, but that we can leave perhaps to a podcast. We can talk for a long time on the gold performance and copper, etc. So for now, thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.